Welcome to the world of people, where psychology takes place. A place wherein people in the society use their mind to the utmost level they can. A survival method of a normal person to sustain of his or her needs and wants. It is psychology that helps a normal person to live and survive. Basically, the term psychology was derived from two Greek terms. Psyche means soul or mind, and logos, which means science or study. More commonly, psychology is defined as the scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. The goals of psychology. There are three goals of psychology. The first goal of psychology is to explain or understand, which tells why organisms behave in certain ways. To predict, this is how organisms will behave in the future. And lastly, to control, the ability of an organism to react and control in a certain event. In general, behavior is included in defining psychology. It refers to the observable actions or responses of man. It means physical actions that can be seen or heard as touching, sleeping, eating, or speaking aloud. A person's behavior is classified between the two. It's either overt, which is the behavior of a person that can be seen, or covert, which is rather not. Here in psychology, our brain is most likely the most significant of all. Why? Because our brain covers all the things we do, including walking, sleeping, thinking, breathing, and dancing. Even if we are unconscious, our brain does still the work. A wide-ranging organ that even psychology also tackles. Why do we feel something? How can we see light? How can we hear sounds from distance? That is why we have our senses. This is called as our sensation, the conscious awareness that follows immediately upon the stimulation of a sense organ. On the other hand, perception is defined as the interpretation of the stimulus. We Filipinos have strong desire to learn, concretized in the prime value we give to education. How do people learn and why do people learn? This is why psychologists studied this idea and came up with this conclusion. Learning is the relatively permanent change in behavior that it occurs as a result of experience. Without learning, we will never develop and make a step in our life. One of the most interesting problems that a student encounters is that of retention. How much of what we learn do we retain in our memory? Why do we forget most of what we learned? Why do we find it difficult to remember common things? That is how our memory works for the moment. It now depends how the information will be encoded, then stored in making associations between new and old informations, and remembering or retrieving of such information recalled in a string of associations. It now depends on how a person can make use of it. He or she have the rights in applying the information that he has. That goes for judgment, the ability of a person to decide, a process of decision making that makes the event change and goes. A wrong decision can lead to a wrong path. A good decision can lead to a good path. We feel bad if we lose something on that decision, but we feel good if we realize that something was gained. Your decision also affects someone's emotion, maybe your emotion or rather them. Emotion is a acutely disturbed affective process or state which is revealed by remarked bodily changes in smooth muscles, glands, and gross behavior. This is why emotions are too numerous, which includes happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, fear, and surprise. The use of every emotion depends on the person on how he or she will use it at a certain amount of time. Due to that, humans have differences and commonalities because of their personality. Our personality is clearly the main idea why do humans differ in each other. Why? Because personality is the stable set of tendencies and characteristics that determines those commonalities and differences of a person's psychological behavior. It involves the characteristics like physical, mental, emotional, social, moral, and spiritual. Where does our drive to do things come from? This is also psychology deals in studying in a human's personality. Psychology defined it as our motivation, a mechanism that directs us towards our goal. In terms of our needs, wants, drive, goals, and motives, there are things that help us to finish and accomplish our objectives. It is so important that if our motivation will drop, it can result to some serious psychopathological disorders. How did we become like this? Why do your parents have the same traits like you? Why your brother or your sister is more capable of doing things than you? How do we become what you are now? Why? How? When? These are the most likely the reason why psychologists come up to this idea. The human development. The things you do, similar to your parents, are most likely called as your nature. The attitude that you have that has been influenced by society you grew up is like you term as your nurture. That is why the personality of a child depends on how the parents nurture their child on their nature. Throughout life, everyone is urged by needs, which must be satisfied. We strive continuously to achieve physical and emotional security for recognition, achievement, success, and self-actualization. But what happens when a person is unable to satisfy his or her needs? Stress is the feeling we have when we evaluate or appraise a situation as something that overloads or strains our physiological resources. When we feel we cannot satisfy our needs, we feel stressed. We cannot do something about it. We call it as stress. Frustration is the feeling that results when your attempts to reach some goal are blocked. You may not be able to reach a goal because of personal limitation, such as making dumb mistakes on exam or forgetting to set the alarm for early study session. These kinds of situations require difficult decisions that put us into conflict. Conflict is the feeling we experience when we must decide between two or more incompatible choices. One reason situations involving conflict trigger feeling of stress is that no matter which option you choose, you must give up something else. When frustration, conflict, and stress become too intense and overwhelming and our coping and defense mechanism become inadequate for dealing with it, we may develop abnormal reactions. Our reactions become disorganized and exaggerated. Neurosis and psychosis are abnormal reactions. Neurosis is a mild form of mental disorder, whereby the person is still in touch with reality. However, it manifests an abnormal reaction pattern that lowers efficiency. Phobic neurosis. Phobia is a Greek word for fear. A person with phobic neurosis has overwhelming and irrational fears of specific situations or objects. A phobia may cause intensive panic or extreme distaste. Psychosis, on the other hand, is a severe mental disorder that usually requires hospitalization. A psychotic loses contact with reality and is incapacitated with or maybe in his environment. many kinds of abnormal reactions that happen in our society. But in spite of all the difficulties they encounter, we can still hope and put faith that they can be treated as long as the science of psychology drives to our life. Psychological and medical treatments are in touch with these abnormal reactions. That means if there is a negative part, there is always a positive part that can arrange the negative part.
Electric. We are electric. We are electric.